Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in the Lord, I don't know what brought you here today, but I came to tell you something that might just change the trajectory of your entire life. You see, we're living in a world that's busy offering counterfeits, temporary highs, empty trophies, shallow success, and calling it meaning. But can I tell you something today? A life that lasts can't be built on things that fade. We've got people running after titles, chasing money, living for likes on a screen, but still lying awake at night wondering, is this it? We've bought into the idea that more stuff means more significance. But God didn't create you to simply survive. He created you to live with purpose, to live with power, and to live with a meaning that doesn't die when the lights go out. So today, I'm not here to give you another motivational speech. I came to deliver a kingdom message. Because until you connect your life to something eternal, to the one who created you, you'll keep searching and never finding. But when you find the meaning that lasts, you find the freedom that lasts, the joy that lasts, and the peace that this world can't give and sure can't take away. So if you're tired of chasing what doesn't satisfy, buckle up, because we're about to go deep, not into the shallow waters of self-help, but into the deep river of truth that flows from the heart of God. You were created on purpose for a purpose, not by accident. Before you ever took your first breath, before your name was ever spoken by human lips, there was a divine design over your life. You are not a random collection of cells, not a cosmic coincidence, not the result of some evolutionary accident. You were knit together by the hands of the Creator with intention, care, and calling. That means your life is meaning not because of what others say about you, but because of the one who formed you with his own fingerprints. You were fearfully and wonderfully made, intricately woven into the tapestry of God's sovereign will. Your existence is evidence that God is still writing stories on the pages of time. You see, one of the greatest lies the enemy tries to whisper into our hearts is that we're insignificant, that our lives don't matter, that we're just existing until it's all over. But let me tell you, the devil is a liar. Because when God made you, he didn't just make a person. He released a purpose. You were born into this world not to blend in, but to stand out, not to wander aimlessly, but to walk intentionally. You were created to reflect something, someone greater than yourself. You were made in the image of God, which means your life has built-in meaning, built-in value, and built-in identity. And when you understand that, everything changes. We live in a culture that tries to define us by our past, our pain, or our performance. But your true purpose didn't come from culture. It came from your Creator. He didn't consult your RA summary before assigning your value. He didn't wait to see how you'd turn out before giving you a calling. No. He formed you with divine purpose. And that purpose was placed inside of you before you ever took your first step. You're not here by mistake, and you're not here just to take up space. God placed you in your family, in your city, in your generation for a reason. There's something in this world that only you can do, something that only your voice can speak, something that only your hands can build. That's why comparison is such a trap. Because when you start looking at someone else's calling, you start missing your own. You can't fulfill your God-given purpose while wishing you had someone else's life. Purpose isn't about imitation. It's about revelation. It's about discovering what God put in you, not envying what he put in them. And when you finally realize that your uniqueness is your assignment, that your story, with all its ups and downs, is part of God's plan, then you stop running from your past and start running toward your purpose. But purpose is not always flashy. It's not always on a stage, in lights, or trending online. Sometimes purpose looks like faithfulness in the quiet, obedience in the unknown, trust in the wilderness. Purpose isn't always about doing big things. It's about doing the right things. It's about aligning your life with the God who gave it to you. Because purpose doesn't start with a dream board. It starts with a prayer life. It starts when you stop asking, what do I want to do with my life? And start asking, God, what did you make me to do? When you make that shift, you begin to move from confusion to clarity, from wandering to walking in purpose. If it doesn't start with God, it won't last. Everything in creation finds its origin in something. A tree begins with a seed. A building starts with a blueprint. A song begins with a melody. But when it comes to life itself, true, lasting, meaningful life, it has to begin with God. Anything else is just a substitute, And substitutes can't sustain what they weren't designed to support. You can build your life on talent, money, relationships, ambition, or applause. But if the foundation isn't God, then the whole thing is destined to crack under pressure. Because God is not just an accessory to your life. He is the source of it. We live in a world that constantly invites us to put ourselves at the center. We're told to follow our hearts, trust our feelings, do what makes us happy, chase our dreams, and build our own truth. But here's the problem. If the foundation is flawed, it doesn't matter how fancy the house looks. If the root is rotten, the fruit won't last. And if your life is built on anything other than the eternal, it will eventually crumble under the weight of reality. Your emotions shift. Your desires change. Circumstances evolve. But God remains the same. He is unchanging, unshakable, and eternal. That's why he's the only safe place to begin. The Bible doesn't say, "In the beginning was ambition." It says, "In the beginning, God." That means before anything else could exist, he was. Before you had goals, before you had dreams, before you even had breath, God was already there. And that's not just a statement about history. That's a framework for living. Because anything worth building must begin with the one who existed before it all. The truth is, you were never meant to define your own meaning. You were meant to discover it through him. Because only the Creator can tell the creation why it was made. Trying to find purpose without God is like trying to put together a puzzle without the picture on the box. You might have all the pieces, but without a clear image of what it's supposed to become, you'll just end up frustrated. God doesn't just give life. He gives context. He gives clarity. He gives direction. When he is your starting point, everything else finds its place. Your gifts, your passions, your struggles, your story, they all start to make sense when you see them through the lens of his purpose. But too often, we treat God like a backup plan. We try to build the life we want, and when it doesn't work, we ask him to come in and fix it. We chase after success, approval, and comfort, and only when it starts falling apart do we think to ask, "God, where are you?" But God was never meant to be added in after the fact. He was always supposed to be the architect. The problem is not that we don't want meaning. It's that we want meaning without surrender. We want purpose without submission. But there is no true life apart from the one who gives it. God doesn't bless what he didn't initiate. If you're asking him to bless plans he wasn't invited into, don't be surprised when they don't hold up. Because whatever is not rooted in him will eventually be revealed for what it is. Temporary, fragile, and incomplete. Starting with God doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're connected to the one who does. It means your identity isn't based on how people see you or how successful you become, but on the unchanging truth of who he is and who you are in him. Success without significance is just a dressed up failure. In today's world, success is often measured by how much you have, how high you climb, or how many people know your name. It's about the car you drive, the number of digits in your income, the square footage of your house, and the number of followers you can collect on a screen. But all of that, while impressive on the outside, can still leave you feeling empty on the inside. Because success by itself isn't the goal, it's significance that gives it meaning. You can have trophies on your shelf and still feel like you've lost. You can have applause from the crowd and still feel alone in the dark. When your life is only built around success, but not around purpose, you're running hard, but in the wrong direction. There's a difference between climbing the ladder and making the climb count. You can reach the top of your career and still feel like something is missing. Why? Because success is external, but significance is internal. Success is about what you do, but significance is about why you do it. Success may impress people, but significance impacts lives. And if your definition of success doesn't involve service, impact, and legacy, then all you've built will eventually fade. You'll leave this earth with your titles, your bank account, your followers. But if none of it was rooted in something eternal, it won't follow you into eternity. Jesus said, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?" That's not just a warning, it's a wake-up call. It's possible to be winning on paper but bankrupt in purpose. It's possible to be famous and still be forgotten. The truth is, God is not impressed by our worldly accolades. He's looking for faithfulness, obedience, and a heart that beats in sync with his. You can build an empire and still miss the kingdom. You can achieve everything you set out to do and still not be doing what you were born to do. Because when God isn't in the center, everything else is off balance. The enemy would love for you to chase success without ever questioning its purpose. He doesn't mind you being busy as long as you're too busy to be effective. He doesn't care how much you accumulate as long as you never stop to ask, is this what I was made for? A life full of activity is not the same as a life full of meaning. You can be moving, grinding, achieving, and still be out of alignment with what truly matters. Because when success becomes your idol, you'll sacrifice everything else to get it. Your health, your family, your peace, your soul. But significance is different. Significance looks like legacy. It looks like influence that outlasts your job title. It looks like the people you lifted, the lives you touched, the seeds you planted in places no spotlight ever reached. Significance is when your name may not be remembered, but your impact can't be erased. It's when you live in such a way that heaven takes notice, not just the world. And the thing about significance is, it doesn't always look like success in the eyes of man. Sometimes it looks like showing up when it's hard. Sometimes it looks like loving people who don't love you back. Sometimes it looks like obedience in obscurity. Because God sees what others miss, and he values what others overlook. Success might open doors, but significance changes rooms. Success can make people notice you, but significance causes people to remember God because of you. The goal is not just to make a name. The goal is to make a difference. You weren't created just to win at life. You were created to mean something in it. Temporary pleasures can never fill eternal voids. We live in a world that offers constant stimulation but very little satisfaction. Every day, we're bombarded with messages that tell us the next thing will make us happy. The next relationship, the next promotion, the next gadget, the next vacation, the next hit, the next drink, the next moment of escape. Culture keeps selling a version of life that promises joy but delivers just enough distraction to keep us coming back for more. It's a cycle. Chase, consume, crash, repeat. And in the middle of it all, there's a soul that's starving for something real. The problem isn't that people don't want fulfillment. The problem is they're searching for it in places that were never meant to give it. The world is full of people who are successful on the surface, but broken underneath. They're surrounded by stuff, but still haunted by emptiness. Because deep in the human heart, there's a space that only eternity can fill. That space isn't shaped like money, like fame, like attention, or even like comfort. It's shaped like God. And no matter how much you pour into that space from temporary sources, it will still leak. You'll still wake up wondering why the satisfaction didn't last. You'll still feel the ache in the quiet moments, the unrest in your spirit that things just aren't quite right. Chasing pleasure isn't new. It's as old as humanity itself. Since the beginning, people have tried to create meaning through experience, indulgence, and self-gratification. But no matter how far they went or how much they had, the result was always the same: temporary relief followed by long-term emptiness. Because what feeds your flesh won't fix your soul. What gives you a high today can leave you hollow tomorrow. Temporary pleasures promise comfort but deliver addiction. They promise escape but lead to entrapment. And all the while, the eternal void inside continues to cry out for something deeper, something truer, something lasting. This is why so many people, even those who look like they have it all together, are quietly falling apart. They smile on the outside but are crumbling on the inside. They've achieved what they thought would make them whole, but still feel incomplete. Because success without peace, pleasure without purpose, and gain without God all lead to the same place: emptiness. You can't binge your way into healing. You can't spend your way into worth. You can't scroll your way into identity. At some point, you have to realize that only the eternal can heal what's broken in the soul. God created you with eternity in mind. That means your soul is wired to long for more than what this world can offer. You were never meant to be fully satisfied by anything here. The pleasures of this world are like salt water. They seem refreshing at first, but the more you consume, the thirstier you become. And eventually, that thirst will lead to desperation, unless it's met by the only source that can truly quench it. You weren't made for fleeting moments. You were made for lasting meaning. And lasting meaning is found when your joy is rooted in something unshakable. This is why people can be surrounded by noise and still feel alone. Why someone can be applauded by crowds and still feel unseen. Because none of that reaches the core. None of that touches the eternal. It's like trying to heal a broken heart with a new outfit. Like trying to solve anxiety with another vacation. It might distract you for a while, but it won't deliver what it promises. There's a reason why God says in his word, in your presence there is fullness of joy. Not partial joy, not momentary joy, fullness. Because only in the presence of the eternal God can your eternal soul find rest. Lasting meaning is found when your story serves God's glory. Your life is not just a random series of events strung together by chance. It is a story being written by the author of all creation. Every moment, every chapter, every high and every low, none of it is wasted when it's placed in the hands of God. Your story was never meant to be about just you. It was meant to reflect something greater, something higher, something eternal. The deepest meaning in life is not found in making yourself known, but in making him known through the way you live, the way you love, and the way you endure. So many people are chasing after significance by trying to write their own story with their own pen and their own agenda. But a life that truly lasts is one that's surrendered. When your story becomes a platform for God's glory, that's when it begins to have eternal weight. Because God doesn't just want to use your strengths. He wants to redeem your struggles. He wants to take the pages of your life that you thought disqualified you and turn them into testimonies that glorify him. The pain you went through, the questions you had, the failures you faced, all of that can become a part of something beautiful when it's yielded to his purpose. We often think that meaning comes from control, from having things figured out, from crafting a life that looks good from the outside. But true meaning comes from surrender. It comes from saying, God, here's my story. Use it for whatever you want. That kind of surrender doesn't always come easy. It takes faith to trust that God can use even the messiest chapters for his glory. But he can. In fact, he specializes in it. All throughout Scripture, we see God using broken people, flawed people, ordinary people, and turning their lives into divine instruments of grace, healing, and transformation. Moses was a stutterer. David was a shepherd and a sinner. Paul was a persecutor. But when their stories aligned with God's glory, they left an impact that's still being felt today. When you live for God's glory, it doesn't mean your life will always be easy, but it will always be meaningful. Because meaning isn't found in comfort. Meaning is found in calling. It's found in knowing that your life points to something greater than success, greater than fame, greater than comfort. It's knowing that someone else's life might change because you were faithful with yours. It's knowing that your scars might be the very thing that gives someone else hope. When your story serves God's glory, your life becomes a lighthouse for others who are still lost in the storm. This is the kind of life that lasts. Not because it's loud, but because it's rooted. Not because it's perfect, but because it's purposeful. Your story doesn't have to be glamorous for God to get glory from it. It just has to be surrendered. The moments where you trusted him in the dark. The choices you made when no one was watching. The forgiveness you extended when it wasn't deserved. The faith you held on to when everything and you wanted to quit. These are the moments that echo in eternity. These are the moments that carry weight. These are the moments that define a life of meaning. You don't need to be famous to be faithful. You don't need a stage to be significant. You don't need to have all the answers to live a life that matters. You simply need to be available. Available to be used by God. Available to say yes, even when it's uncomfortable. Available to shine his light through your story, even when the story hasn't gone the way you planned. Because the truth is, when your story is in his hands, no part of it is wasted. Every word, every wound, every wonder, it all becomes a vessel for his glory.